Hello my friends, welcome to the start of another weekly reading vlog, and once again I'm going to be letting Spookopoly pick the books that I'm going to be reading. We're already off to a backed up start because first off, I still have yet to read Saga by Brian K. Vaughan, and this was like 2 rolls ago. I just haven't gotten around to actually sitting down and reading it, and my physical reading has not been going well this month. I believe this was for Becca Recommends. It was like the only book that I could find on there I owned, which was pretty much like the one focus I'm trying to stick to this month. So at some point, here soon hopefully, I will be sitting down to actually read this. Roll I had after that, which I talked about this in my prior Spookopoly vlog, which I'll go ahead and link in the cards up above. I had a double, which means I needed to complete that prompt twice. And I landed on Scream, which was a book with a word-related sound in the title, and one of those was silence. So I utilized that to start Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes, and seeing as how this is a sci-fi horror and 2 of Josh's favorite games fall into that genre, I forced him to listen to some of the audiobook with me. That was when we were driving down to Houston. We did a little vacation away and ended up going to a new haunted house that actually was 8 houses in one, so that was pretty cool. But we ended up listening to 120-ish pages of this. We haven't gotten too much farther since then. I am liking it. This was kind of sold to me as like the Titanic as a spaceship, and then we're following this crew who stumble upon it and are investigating to figure out what happened here and what led to this tragedy, because there's not an iceberg, but something did take place because there are a lot of people left on this spaceship, and it's been missing for like 20 years. It is definitely unsettling. You get to see the main character after all of the events have happened, and they're recounting the events to someone. Specifically, our main character is now in some sort of like futuristic mental hospital almost to deal with all the trauma she experienced, and these 2 people are investigating it because they don't believe that what she says is necessarily true. They think she's responsible for her whole team not coming back. It's interesting. I'm very intrigued to see how does this all work out. There's something creeping in, but like we have no idea what that is. It's also kind of funky to see stuff that's like totally normal in a contemporary setting, but how it's vintage or old school. They utilized it in this Titanic ship, it's called the Aurora, to sort of raise its status and make the experience so much more unique and that of like a cruise ship. It's wonky, but I like it. So because I knew I was going to be listening to the audiobook of this one with Josh, and I know that's going to take a little bit, I did go ahead and do another roll. So the next one I got was for Feed Scroll. I keep landing in the corners. Feed Scroll, I went to Instagram, did a little screen recording, and I had to scroll until I found a book that I owned and fell into some sort of a October vibe. I ended up landing on The Return by Rachel Harrison, which works out perfectly because I have been really wanting to get to this one, especially since how I love Rachel Harrison. This one is following this group of friends, one of which disappeared, and then like 2 years later she reemerges, but everybody in the friend group thinks there's something not quite right with her. I only got like 18 pages in when Josh and I were driving down to Houston, and he was driving and I did a little bit of reading. I need to get better about my physical reading. I did find the audiobook available on Spotify, but these chapters are really long, so it's not the easiest for alternating back and forth between physically reading and listening to the audio. This will be interesting. Anyway, it is Wednesday. Technically, I did start this vlog yesterday, but kind of had a family emergency. Things were a little wild last night and also this morning. Normalizing a little bit now. I went to my romance book club, which was a lot of fun. Our prompt for the month was a paranormal romance, so I ended up talking about Full Moon Over Freedom, which I read in last month's weekly reading vlog. Or no, actually, I might have read that in my Spookopoly vlog. So that was fun, and then I came home, Josh and I finished watching out Hotel Transylvania, which is just an easygoing Halloween movie. Now I am hopefully gonna go get ready for bed and try to read a little bit more of The Return. I'm so hesitant to try and read Saga because I don't know, I don't like reading graphic novels in segments. I just want to like sit down and read it in one go, and I don't think that's gonna happen tonight, honestly. But I'm making myself promise that I will read this in this weekly reading vlog. I'm going to do it, I swear. Hey guys, happy Thursday. Things were a little bit more normal today. So I had work. It was fine, pretty slow. I actually was dedicated to reading. So I've been listening to the audiobook of The Return by Rachel Harrison for most of today. It's weird because I do feel like there's a lot of similarities in this book to the two books I've read from Harrison previously, and those aspects I do really like. They're very character focused, there's some sort of commentary going on, and it does tie into womanhood. But I kind of feel like this dragged a lot more in the middle than I ever felt Cackle or Such Sharp Teeth did. I like the reflection we're seeing 𝗖cie go through. She is really like self-deprecating and almost self-destructive at the start of the book. The more we learn about her, the more we see that this is actually just an ongoing pattern she has, where she almost just can't let herself be happy. And it's really starting to negatively affect her relationship with her friends in different ways. And like, it's very interesting to see that play out. I do like seeing the friendship dynamics that go on between 𝗖cie and Julie, 𝗖cie and May, 𝗖cie and Molly, May and Molly, Molly and Julie, May and Julie. All the different variations of friendship that are involved in their friend group, I think are being presented very well. I feel like every single one of these characters is different enough that I never confuse them. I understand who each of them are, I get their backgrounds, and the writing style itself also feels very true to Harrison's prior books. It's very dialogue focused, it's really punchy, and it reads really quickly. But I don't know, just like so much of this book really only focuses on the friend group and seeing the changes in this friendship. I wish there was a little bit more going on in the plot in the middle here. I think it's because I don't love any of these characters. I like them, I think they're interesting to watch, but I'm not really rooting for any of them. I don't particularly love a specific one and want to see more of them. And with 𝗖cie, our main character who we're seeing through, the more we learn about her, the more I dislike her. I think everything we're learning about her makes sense for this character, but God, this is not a woman I would ever want to be friends with. So I'm liking this, but I'm just not really loving it in comparison to Cackle or Such Sharp Teeth, unfortunately. I am nearly at the end now. I don't have much left to go, and we're finally starting to get some actual answers, but even then we still don't really have an answer. And I do think that's kind of interesting for a horror book. We don't know exactly what's wrong. We don't know exactly what's been happening. There's different things going on in the background. So I do like that aspect, and that has had me curious, but again, I'm like in the last 50 pages and we're just now finally starting to get answers. But I'm not gonna quite finish this tonight, and I'll tell you why. So I'm a member of Jan Agaton's Patreon. I've talked about it numerous times. One of the perks she has is she hosts a different readathon every single month, and this month it is to get out of the haunted house. So we have 4 different prompts, and the first one is to read any sort of a spooky book. I honestly did not think I was gonna get so much of this read today. I put this as my first book, and I don't really want to shift it because in preparation, I did go ahead and do my next few rolls on Spookopoly to see if I can manage to complete the prompts for Spookopoly and also the prompts for this little readathon. I do know what I'm going to be reading next for the next 3 books actually, and honestly, like, the board was really nice to me. That's awesome, but I'm going to hold off on getting into it because there's also always the chance that I won't actually end up reading all these books this weekend. Actually, there's a strong possibility I won't. So I'm gonna hold off on finishing The Return until tomorrow morning probably. The readathon starts tomorrow and then it goes for the rest of the weekend. So I'll finish this then, and then I'll talk to y'all whenever I start into the next book. It's Thursday, as per usual. I'm gonna go over to my brother's and hang out. We're gonna have barbecue for dinner, and I guess maybe watch like a Disney Halloween movie perhaps. That sounds pretty fun. Hey guys, happy Friday. I hope you had a good one. Let's talk books because I have Thank you for that. First off, I finished The Return by Rachel Harrison, and I did like this. I don't think I love it quite as much as her other works that I've read, but I did enjoy it, and especially at the end, once we get to see the real big bad, we get that final reveal. I actually really like how Harrison ended up playing things out. I like how she kind of brought back the commentary around grief that was going on, and I really liked seeing how the friendship between this whole group had really changed throughout the book because of the things they experienced together. I liked all that. I had a hard time with Elise. She really did grind my gears every once in a while. I just think the part in the middle got a little draggy. So apart from that, I did like it, and that way I finished another roll. Plus, this was the first book finished for the readathon of Get Out of the Haunted House. So that meant next I dived into a fast-paced book, which was Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. This was a recent acquire because one of my mom's friends was kind enough to give it to me. She really liked it, and I've had it on my TBR for quite some time. I've heard a lot of positive things about it. Honestly, didn't really remember what it was about. And that was kind of a problem because if I had, I might have realized this isn't really a book for me anymore. Whenever I added this to my TBR, I was still really interested in pretty much all thrillers. I hadn't really figured out my specific taste yet. Now though, I've learned I don't really like domestic thrillers. And the tagline of this book kind of tells you all you need to know about it. The perfect marriage or the perfect lie. We start out and we meet this couple, Grace and Jack, who seem to have the perfect marriage. They are throwing a dinner party and the house is absolutely beautiful and decked out. They both look wonderful. They're both so gorgeous and they just seem so in love. Grace has made this totally amazing spread of food, but the whole time something is clearly not right. Something is unsettling, weird, specifically around Jack. Yeah, like pretty immediately you can tell that Jack's not a good dude. I'll just say that. So even with that, I did decide to continue reading because I thought it was interesting that we jumped backwards in time and get to see when this couple first meets. But pretty immediately, basically I just had a hard time turning off my logic brain with this. This seems like a thriller where you shouldn't think about it. You should just be enjoying the ride. I was having a hard time doing that because I just kept poking holes in the logic of a situation like this happening. Maybe it's just because I'm pretty well read about intimate partner violence. Seeing it play out the way it was here felt so unrealistic to me. Nails on a chalkboard to read it. I didn't care about these characters. I didn't want to watch this play out. Like 78 pages in, I decided to DNF that. For Spookopoly, theoretically, I could make myself read a different book, but that's not the kind of person I am. DNFing is self-care, so yeah, no, I'm putting this down. That's at least 2 prompts down for the weekend readathon, which is really great. Tonight, Josh and I ended up watching Death on the Nile, the Hercule Poirot movie, because he hadn't seen that one yet, so that was fun. That was our Halloween movie for the night. And then we ended up going to a new haunted house, actually. It was about a good hour away. Thankfully, we got fast passes and they weren't too expensive. So, I mean, we saw the line and it was like, woo, we really lucked out on doing those tonight. And thankfully we literally walked up, maybe waited like 5 minutes before going through. It was a different house. I think in all it was like maybe 30 minutes. It was cool because the house itself is actually supposed to be a haunted house. And then they had a setup with a lot of funky animatronics throughout that was really great. And then it continues out into the woods behind where they've set up a bunch of different like sections. So there was one that was clowns. There was one that was like asylum. They had an animatronic with a pig on his head and he was moving back and forth with a cleaver, and this actor hopped up looking exactly the same and smacked the countertop and scared the crap out of me. He did a great job. He paired it with that animatronic perfectly. So yeah, it was cool that we got to go do a different one. And while we were driving down and back, we continued listening to Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. So now we're about 178 pages in. I'm starting to get a little frustrated with our main character, Claire, because we learn that she has this really traumatic backstory. And that's awful. It's terrible what she's experienced. And I understand why the author utilized that to give her hallucinations, because then it makes her question herself. But now that they're starting to experience strange things on this ghost ship, it just seems like a plot convenience to make Claire continue questioning everything and just insist everybody doesn't understand. She knows she's losing it, but they're just trying to make her feel better. I kind of wish that aspect wasn't there. Rather, everybody on this team is starting to hallucinate and just following along with that. The slow creeping dread that's going on though is really unsettling. I do like that. I think the atmosphere of this is super cool. The more we see on the ship and the more our crew starts to investigate, the more curious I am. I'm still curious. I have my qualms of what's happening, but I am still enjoying this enough, and I think Josh is as well. He started to compare it to Dead Space even more. That was him being a weirdo walking by. We still have about 160 more pages to go, but I told him our goal is to finish this book by the end of October. Good evening, friends. Happy Saturday. Pretty good day overall. I hung out with my brother for a little bit this morning, and then I came home. Josh and I ended up making these breakfast sandwiches things for, I'm gonna say brunch. It was like really more late lunch, but they were really tasty. And then we watched Zombieland, which is always a fun time. A classic, honestly. Then tonight we ended up going over to Josh's parents to have dinner because his mom made her homemade spaghetti sauce and it was delicious. While we were driving there and back, we listened to some more of Dead Silence. So now we've surpassed the halfway point. We are in chapter 24, so about 235 pages in. I like the change that took place around the halfway point, where before we had the past and present timeline. Now we're like solely staying in the present. We're not quite to getting answers yet, but like we're leading up to answers. We're finally getting some real development in the present timeline, which I'm excited for and has me really chomping at the bit to figure out what actually happened and whether or not everything Claire remembers is true, is actually what took place on this creepy ship. I am a little frustrated that it seems like she keeps trusting these people who are really just using her for their own sake. I'm frustrated that she seems to be putting a lot of faith in these people when I'm like, but why? You know not to trust them, and yet, but I am liking this, so made some more progress. And then I did start into my next pick for the layer readathon this weekend, Escaping the Haunted House, and that was a hard-hitting pick. Plus, I ended up doing my next roll for Spookopoly. And that was a mood read. So to mix the both of those, because it worked out perfectly, I'm finally gonna read Woman Eating by Claire Kohda. I've had this on numerous TBRs in the past, but it is supposed to be about this woman who is a half vampire, and she's finally kind of going out on her own and living her own life for the first time. She is fascinated by food, but she actually can't eat it because since she's part vampire, she has to sustain herself on blood. Jan was telling me that it's actually kind of a metaphor for eating disorders, and seeing as how that's a topic that I'm pretty well read on, I am already really enjoying this. I have a lot of annotations that I barely started in. When it comes to the main character starving herself, there's like little bits of feminism sort of woven in as well. She clearly has anxiety also, which makes sense seeing as how she's living this life not particularly normal and she has to keep it a secret. Her mother at the start of this book is being put into an assisted living home because it seems like she's losing her grip on reality. She's that old of a vampire. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this. And then the other aspect that I'm assuming will become more prevalent, but like at this point I've barely scratched the surface of it, is that she's an artist, just like her father was. I believe she's a painter, so I think that kind of like goes along with the painting cover. But the vampire elements themselves I think are going to be pretty minimal, and I'm not really sure how graphic this is gonna get as far as horror goes, because right now it really does seem like it's a literary book with magical realism elements. I'm not sure though, but one way or another I am intrigued. I'm going to keep reading. I am hoping I'm gonna really like this. Not gonna continue reading right now. Josh just ran to the store to grab some more cookies. We got Nestle Toll House Halloween cookies last night and they were very tasty, so he's going to buy more. And then we're gonna hop into watching Sinister 2. We watched the first one a few days ago. ago because I'd never seen it, and I did actually like it. I thought it was original. So we're jumping into the second one, and I'm very intrigued to see like what direction this goes. And I'm hoping it's not just going to be a repeat of what the first did. I'm trying really hard not to sneeze because my allergies been so bad today. But yeah, I just thought I'd take the opportunity while Josh was gone to give y'all a little update. Hello my friends, so happy Sunday, and today was officially Buns and Roses Day, which was this romance book tea that I attended with almost 30 authors, I believe. I did a little TBR project. If you somehow haven't heard about it, I'll put a link to that in the cards up above. But that was today, and I had so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I got to meet some really awesome authors and have cool conversations with them about like the publishing industry and booktube and stuff. I also broke my book buying ban, but I'm, reasoning with myself that this was a once-a-year event. I feel like it's fair, and I got to actually go and speak with all these authors. I got to get their books signed, so it's not going to count. These don't count. If anything, I'll say these are my birthday present to myself. I did read a little bit more into Woman Eating by Kohda, and now we're kind of seeing that our main character has anxiety as well. We're kind of starting to dive into the art scene aspect, but I didn't read too much of this because I was kind of go this morning. I just got up and made breakfast. That's when I listened to a little bit of it. Once I finished eating, I had to immediately start getting ready for the event. And seeing as I was a little nervous about getting lost just because I didn't know the place it was held at, I didn't listen to an audiobook when I was driving down. But I thought I would give you guys a quick little haul of everything I got. So I actually took with me The Boyfriend Project by Farah Roshan. This was one of the few books that I already owned by one of the authors, but it was still really cool to get her to sign that, and I'm very excited to start this series. So that's one. I also met Amelie Howard, and she signed this one as well. I love that she actually color-coded all of the signatures for the book, which I love that. She also signed The Worst Duke in London, and she gave me this spicy print. I'm very excited, and we gushed about our love for 10 Things I Hate About You, which was the driving force that inspired this book. Like I said, she color coordinated to the cover. Isn't that amazing? I love that. My type A brain is all over that. I also thanked Bethany Bennett for being the author to show me that I can actually like a historical romance. And since reading one of her books, this one came out. This one is Good Duke Gone Wild, but it's a historical about a woman who writes erotic novels. That sounds like a really fun time. I loved it, and I adore that she said long live romance. That was super cute, seeing as how, that was kind of the focus of today. I also got to talk with Angelina M. Lopez. I grabbed the first book in the series of hers. I read the second one, so she was telling me she does have plans for a third, but she is changing publishers, so it might be a little bit of a wait, unfortunately. But we also talked about our love of unlikable heroines, so that was really cool, and has me intrigued to try some of her other stuff that she's written because she likes those sorts of characters. Oh, and this one is After Hours on Milagro Street. I don't think I said that. Then I also gushed with 𝗖cie RH. This is the first book in her series, but I read the third, Forever Her Bachelor, which she was telling me was the one that she was the most nervous about because it had a lot of angst in it, but it also had more spice. And so we were talking about how she handled the angst, and I loved it. I ate it up, and she was telling me the plans for the fourth book in the series, which is going to be a Black historical romance. I love it. Cannot wait to see it. She actually wrote in here, thanks so much for reading forever. I'm so excited. I'm so excited because I really was impressed with her character work in the third book. I'm very hopeful for this one that I'm gonna love it just as much. She did say it's not as spicy, that it only really has one spicy scene in comparison to the 4 in Forever, but one way or another, I can't wait for the romance. And then I had to grab Addie Duloc's One Season with the Duke. This is a debut, actually, and I heard a really glowing review about it from one of my book club friends, so I knew I wanted to grab a copy, and I was telling her about that, and it made her so happy. Yeah, it's just getting the signatures makes me so excited. The only one I wasn't able to get signed just because this author wasn't at her table when I went by was Tracy Solheim's Second Chance Christmas. She was one of the authors that sat at my table, so I got this one for free, which was really cool. And she actually gave us a few little goodies to go along with it. I'm very intrigued. I need to read a holiday romance for my book club next month. So this might be it. The author I officially sat with was Jamie Wesley, and she actually gave us The Trouble with Love and signed it early. So I'm so excited to get into this one. It looks like it's gonna be a second chance romance. So y'all know that's one of my favorite tropes. Can't wait to get into it. And then lastly was the keynote speaker. She also gave away books to everyone, which was so incredibly kind because there was over 100 people there. And so I got Rancher's Christmas Storm. She has a lot of books, and many of them are parts of really long series. So I have no clue where this falls, anything else about it. I will probably have to look into that a little bit. Again, I'm intrigued, and also a contender for holiday romance that I gotta read next month. I just thought I'd give y'all a little bit of a lowdown because that was so much fun, and I've been talking it up for quite a while now on my shorts. It was a ton of fun. If you are in the DFW area, I highly recommend checking out Buns and Roses. It is an annual thing. It'll be happening again next year, and I cannot wait now. Hey y'all, happy Monday. So I actually was originally supposed to close out this vlog today, but because last week's start of the vlog was a little crazy, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and continue it into tomorrow. I did want to talk to y'all because I did actually make some progress into Woman Eating by Claire Kohda. I probably have like 80 pages left now, and I am liking this. It definitely is much more literary than horror. There's like a few scenes here or there that do have some grotesque imagery going on, but they've been pretty few and far between. I do think the character creation of Lydia is really interesting. Kind of understanding the identity of this character and watching her life unfold as she hits this transitionary point of her life. Lydia does starve herself fairly regularly. She really likes to push herself to that brink of life or death. There's just a lot going on when it comes to many different themes. I mean, the complicated relationship she has with her mother due to their vampirism, and then kind of like the grief she has because her mother is starting to suffer due to her age. Kind of similar to, say, dementia or Alzheimer's, but it's also not quite that because she's a vampire. There's also, you know, the influence her mother had on her eating habits. We finally started to see a little bit about the art scene. Lydia also has anxiety, so that's a prevalent thing that keeps coming up again and again. She's trying to make friends for the first time and really connecting with somebody that wasn't just her mom. There's so much going on in this book, which is really impressive given the fact it's so small, and I do have a lot of stuff to annotate from it, but I'm also just like not loving it. I don't read a lot of literary stories because, well, I think you can take a lot from them. They're just not the most exciting in my opinion. That's why I don't tend to read them. I just wish we were getting a little bit more of the horror, but I am gonna continue reading it. I don't know about tonight. I might listen to some more of the audiobook tomorrow. And I say that because I am so freaking determined. I'm gonna read Saga tonight. This is me swearing to myself that I'm gonna do it. I'm going to read this freaking graphic novel. It is not that long. It is ridiculous that I've still yet to pick it up. I'm gonna do it. Good morning, friends. So we are officially gonna close out this vlog. I'm so sorry I did not film an update last night.
wasn't feeling it basically. Josh and I had a pretty good night last night. We ended up going for a really nice long walk with Faith, about 2 miles. Then we got back and we ended up making risotto for dinner, which was delicious, but takes quite some time. So then once we finished that, I was just like dead on the couch. We ended up watching Heathers, a classic. But while we were making dinner, we did listen to some more of Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. And so we're officially back on the creepy ship. We're starting to get answers. We are, but like not enough answers. I'm hitting the point now where it's like it's getting difficult for me to wait to have time to listen to it with Josh because like I just want to find out what's going on next. I need to figure it out. I'm so freaking close. But I am liking this. It was a slow to start, but at this point, I'm really digging it. I also just really like the setup of it. It's pretty unique in comparison to like most other horror books that I've read. Overall, I'm just more enjoying the story for the story itself. So we did make some progress into this. I did actually finish Woman Eating yesterday, and I liked this. I think certain themes that were done in this book were really interesting. I really liked the vampirism metaphor for an eating disorder and kind of how the author was presenting that. I also liked the relationship she had with her mother and kind of this learned toxicity that she got from her and how that can kind of play in with the eating disorder element as well. Problem is, I feel like there were just a few too many things going on. I mean, we have the issue with our main character's mother, the eating disorder problem. Obviously, like her coming into herself because she's living on her own for the first time. That weird grief while a person is still alive whenever they're going through dementia or Alzheimer's, because that's sort of comparable to what's happening with her mother. Then there's also the art element because her main character is an artist and she has this internship at this really big art studio. And with that, there's kind of like aspects of everything that goes on in the art scene, classism, sexism. There's bits about relationships in here. It felt like there was a little bit too much going on for how short this book was. Oh, and I didn't even mention the fact that the main character is a mixed woman, and so there's some discussions around her identity as a mixed woman. She's part Japanese from her father and I believe Malaysian from her mother, but she's also part British. I kind of wish the art element specifically had just been removed because that part didn't interest me. Relationship she had with her mother, the eating disorder, and her identity as a mixed race woman. Those parts were the most interesting to me, and I think because the author was tying them into the vampirism element in a really clever way. But because there was other stuff going on in the book, it felt like we didn't have as much time to really explore those. I also feel really weird labeling this book as horror, but I finished it at least. I did like it. I also finally finished Saga. I'm trying to get back in the habit of reading before bed, and then I'm also trying to start a habit of reading first thing in the morning. Josh leaves about 30 minutes before I have to get up really, so I'm trying to make it where whenever he leaves, I wake up and start reading and get some pages in before I actually have to get up and start getting ready for work. So I did finally start into Saga by Brian K. Vaughan, and I like this. I'm really intrigued. I'm not surprised that so many people have read this and enjoyed it. I mean, it was a really fast read. The art style is beautiful. It's definitely not young adult. It's got some really heavy themes, some very adult content in it as well. But I love the color usage in it. I like the sci-fi elements. I'm always a big fan in my sci-fi shows of interspecies relationships. That sounds so weird every time I say it, but they're aliens, they're different species. But I love seeing like how these two come together when they have very different backgrounds and then seeing like the mixing of their cultures. It's already been pretty fun because seeing as how their two worlds are at war. Our male character, Marco, is a pacifist, or so he says. He doesn't think violence is the answer to anything, and he just thinks it's stupid. She doesn't claim her people, she doesn't claim their war that they are waging, but like she hasn't really sworn off violence in the same way, and they just have some really funny and cute interactions throughout this. I also like that it's being told through the perspective of the child. It's actually her telling us her life story, which also makes me really intrigued to see like how does this child grow throughout the series thus far. So yeah, I'm really glad that I finally started into this. Thankfully my library has the rest of these because collecting them would be pretty expensive. So I will be continuing it at some point or another. I want to maybe try and finish one of my manga series that I'm in the middle of first. So I finally finished one book that I've been putting off for a while, and then I finished one roll. So on that note, that is it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me a cat emoji in the comments. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!